So welcome to the ACT conference and thank you for selecting this workshop. This workshop session is called STEM and SEL Explorations through the Mind Jar. We want to let you know that this workshop is being recorded and I am pleased to introduce you to your speaker, David Tong, who will be your facilitator for this session. We'll be dropping the workshop evaluation at the chat room in a few minutes before the workshop concludes. So I will make sure to remind you of that. David?
All right, thanks, Cecilia. Again, my name is David Tong. I'm from the TGR Foundation, and today I'm very excited to have you guys. You'll join us in this workshop as we explore STEM and SEL connections and explore that through a simple activity, which is looking around the mind jar. So one of the things that I did want to provide is just a little background about who we are and what we do at the TGR Foundation. You can find some of our social on this slide as well. But essentially, we are focused on really providing opportunities for our youth to expand on their knowledge and skills and just really finding ways to connect that with their future workforce. Really not just bringing the content, but really bringing them the ability to navigate the world that we live in today. So our many programs tackle that in a variety of different ways. Our learning labs work directly with students, as you can see here. We also have a college access program that supports our scholars through the application process and also through the college journey in the Earlwood Scholar Program. A lot of our digital resources is also available online for free at our Explore site, which I'll share with you in our chat later today. And then finally, I'm part of the CREATE team, which is essentially providing professional learning for our educators, really bringing a lot of our best practices at our TGR Learning Labs at our foundation and providing it for educators like you to really impact our youth, okay? And so, throughout the session today and what we are doing here in this hour is similar to what we do in a lot of our professional learning programs. And so I'd encourage you all to, join us in some other workshops that we'll share out in the future as well as part of this educator community and really bring these connections together, okay? So this is the CREATE team here. We're a small, mighty team, and we've definitely shifted a lot of our trainings to virtual and distance learning. As you can see, this is actually an activity that we've taken that we normally do in person, and we've really formatted to have it work in a digital format. So whatever your background is, if you are still working with students virtually, this could be an opportunity to engage them in that way as some examples of strategies. Or if you are working in person, you can still utilize the same types of questioning techniques and inquiry strategies to help make them be more proactive at their learning. Okay, so again, our program really focuses on these interdisciplinary approaches. So it's not just science, it's not just math, it's not, STEM isn't exactly a subject, right? So really thinking about how all of these disciplines come together, and at the same time, how can we really also add those layers of social emotional learning, positive youth development, and really allow the students to understand that, hey, the learning that I'm having right now is really an example of how we collaborate with each other as adults in the future in our workforce. Okay, so thinking about beyond their community, think more globally, how they can make these career connections is really what our team has our educators promote. So with that being said, I would like for us to now reflect on this really simple question. I like to engage our group here, and I'd love for you all to share in the chat. We'll be using the chat quite often today. So, feel free to just share this kind of really broad question. What do you feel is the greatest need for our youth at this current time? I know lots of, 2020 has been an interesting year. So feel free to just share one or two thoughts about this specific question, and I'll give you about a minute. And if you'd like to just share out loud, I'm very happy to hear your voice as well. So feel free to unmute yourself and share out loud too. Awesome. Thanks, Carl. Share the idea of a hope for a positive future, connection, and perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I think especially, right, given the state of the pandemic right now, a lot of our students are still kind of within the virtual world. And so making sure that they see that positive future, right? That perspective, good. Connecting with peers definitely is important, right? Awesome. Positive relationships. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that we really want to reinforce. You know, I think there's definitely ways to engage students in learning, whether it be activities, but how do you foster those positive relationships? And a lot of that is simple questioning. And, you know, what I'm sharing today is may come from like an educator's perspective, like a teaching in a classroom perspective, but really these questioning strategies is something that just goes beyond the content, right? So thinking about their day-to-day, you know, how do you frame these questions that will allow to dig deeper and really show that you have a genuine interest with your students and your youth that you work with. Great, thank you for sharing all those responses there. Okay, so again, I love kind of the discussions and ideas that you guys might have. So if there's any questions or maybe some thoughts about what I'm sharing, please feel free to you know, share in the chat, and we'll definitely address that throughout the workshop today. Okay, so to continue with our kind of mindset and in terms of the ideas of questioning here, what I'd like for you to do now is take a look at this image here, right? I'm gonna just start getting your minds just generating some curiosity. Okay, so what's in this picture? What do you notice? So looking at this image here, I'd like for you to share in the chat what you think this image might be of. What is this? Feel free to share, even just ask questions about it if that helps, or even draw from your prior experiences, but feel free to share whatever you think this might be. Give you about a minute. Okay, good. So we have some thoughts about coral reef or something underwater. Yeah, okay. Could be some frost or perhaps even a plant. That's interesting, right? Yes, reminds me a little of the holidays, right? Christmas. Definitely looking forward to that season this year. Maybe something frozen, okay. And I'm just kind of sharing you from the educator's perspective right now, right? As your answers are rolling in, you know, I'm thinking, okay, this is the prior knowledge that my participants are sharing, right? So this is helping me understand your perspectives, right? So remember we were just talking about perspectives, right? So understanding where our students are coming from with a simple image without having me share something ahead of time. All right. So I'd love to hear, Carl, would you mind unmuting yourself? Why do you think it's underwater? Or you can share in the chat as well. Why do you think it's this image looks like it's something underwater?
I think that honestly, you know, because you know the blue definitely kind of, you know, indicates maybe some water vibes. I guess like the frostiness of it, kind of I could get where somebody said something from Frozen, but it kind of reminds me of kind of that coral reef feel. The bottom is like brown, so it kind of made me think like maybe the sea floor. That's kind of, you know, how stuff grows underwater, you know, kind of crazy stuff that you usually don't see, you know, just on dry land. So that was kind of the vibes I was getting from it. It looks maybe microscopic, something like very zoomed in. That was kind of my second train of thought. It looks like something that just was like zoomed in very closely. But yeah, that was kind of the vibe I was getting from it.
Awesome, Carl. And snaps to that. You know, in our programs, we usually just give props using with our snaps, but I love that perspective, you know, and just the detail that you just described is really what we want our youth to be able to communicate, right? Using their voice, using their prior experiences and being confident. It's okay if it's not exactly what it is, right? It's really helping them investigate and being able to question and understand what they're actually perceiving. All right, so I'm not going to leave you hanging for too long. I'm actually going to share with you what this image is. As you can see here, this is actually a microscopic image, right? So Carl kind of hit on that. It might be even zoomed in a bit. This is actually iron oxide, where water actually has been physically placed on it, so you can actually see some of those elements. And it's interesting how iron oxide actually works with water here. So this is just a zoomed in picture, and you can imagine just this simple exercise that you can do with your students on any type of image. It doesn't have to be science related. It could be even just an image that is from a newspaper or some type of media that provokes some bigger idea, right? So that helps them really get their minds thinking, and it allows you to really see where they're at, right, without giving any prior knowledge. So this is just one simple way to share a provocation, right, a way to kind of engage them emotionally and cognitively. So I highly encourage you all to kind of utilize this type of technique. Okay. All right, so now that I got your minds thinking a little bit here, I'd like for us to now jump into our activity, right? And this is a mind jar, and as you can see this image here, and this is a simple tool that can help us pause and respond in just difficult situations, right? And just provide a sense of clarity and calmness. I believe many of you may have been given many resources on mindfulness strategies, and this is just one simple way where you can incorporate those things and build in some of the STEM and science interdisciplinary ideas within this context as well. Okay, so the lesson that's actually tied to this workshop is located on the app. You can actually download it from there, and it's actually more comprehensive than what I'm sharing with you today. There's a lot of STEM concepts that are built into there with some standards as well that you can pull from. You can really modify and adjust based off of your students and how you know them best. So what I'm going to do today is just modify that based off of our audience here and also the time that we have together. Again, feel free to ask any questions as we go through this exercise today. All right, so let's do this. What I'm going to do here is to start and share my view here. So if on the description of this workshop, if you did want to participate in this activity, you can definitely have the materials ready. If you want to pull them, if you have them around your house, you can definitely do that, or you can just follow along with me today. And I will actually share with you a view of my setup here so that you can imagine as if you were here with me. Okay. So I still got the chat window open, so feel free to share any questions you might have. But here are the supplies that we'll need to create the simple mind jar. And there's actually many different alternatives. And this is actually where the great part of the teaching and learning is that you don't have to stick to the script in a sense for this specific activity. You can actually even see what happens if you add some alternatives. So the first item you will need is a simple clear container. In this case here, I have a mason jar with a lid. And definitely need a lid, otherwise there will be a nice little mess that you'll have to clean up later on. So make sure you have a lid and a simple container. The other item we will need today is going to be some light corn syrup. Some of you might know this as Caro syrup. I have a different brand here, but essentially it's just really light corn syrup. You can kind of see the thickness of it as it kind of moves a little bit slowly. If you don't have light corn syrup, maybe think of different alternatives that might be of similar consistency and transparency. The other item we'll need today is the best item ever. We got some glitter. Okay, so you can never have enough glitter around the house. If you don't have glitter, maybe think about some other alternatives that might work as glitter, maybe some small fine items. You can imagine the creativity that students have lying around the house or even outside in kind of their environment. So I have just a couple of small containers here. You can definitely find these at craft stores or even online in bulk form. Okay. The other item we will need today is, I'm gonna move this to the side, just some soap, not a lot. This is just gonna be helping us for one of the steps, but you just need a couple of drops of soap. I just pulled the hand soap from my nearest location in my distance learning environment today. And then finally, just a little bit of water. I just pulled this from the sink. You actually don't need this much water, but it just needs to fill up the rest of the container that I have here. All right, so those are the things that we'll be using. If any of you are following with me, awesome. I'd love to see how it works. Otherwise, definitely kind of follow along with me and imagine as if you were here doing the activity with me. Okay. So I'm going to stop for a moment, stop sharing the screen. I'm actually going to have a really just brief conversation as educators. Okay. Thinking about now, if you've had a similar experience as I have, when I was teaching the classroom, I've taught math in the high school level. I've also worked with expanded learning students in the after school program. And I remember recalling this awesome activity that we did with students when I was teaching an aerospace class, where each kid was able to have a rocket kit. Okay, and this is a water bottle rocket, and in there were a sheet of instructions on how to assemble this water bottle rocket together. And so basically, it says step one, take the water bottle rocket, design it. Step two, cut out the fins. Step three, glue the fins at these marks, measure it. Step four, all that good stuff. So what I was worried about and just wondering was, how do I make sure that students are actually learning the knowledge and skills of the ideas and concepts around this rocket, versus simply just having them follow the steps and then pulling the cord and seeing the rocket launch. I think that's still very exciting. We definitely have the emotional engagement. We definitely have the hands-on, but how do we make sure the minds-on are also present as well, right? How do I inspire my students to keep the curiosity going? These are just questions I'm asking out loud. I like for you to keep it in your head as we go through this specific activity here with the mind jar. But I'll be using some questioning strategies to really help bring out some simple activities that you may already have, and just taking it a step further. How do I incorporate some of these other strategies, whether it be SEL strategies or maybe questioning strategies or other things that we'd like to really build in with our day? Because sometimes we're like, hey, there's so many different projects. There's this lesson here, this lesson here. But let's hold and pause for a moment and then really see how can these connections really build together. Okay. All right. So the exciting part is now we're actually going to create the mind jar, but imagine if you were the students as well. And I'd like for you just to throw on that curious mind. Okay, so I'm going to bring back my camera here. Okay, and let me start from the very beginning. We have our mind, our jar, okay, our container here. I'm just going to grab the corn syrup. And what I will first do is simply just fill about a third of the way. Okay, so here we go, making sure y'all can see it. And I would normally ask, like, what do you notice? How is the corn syrup pouring into the jar? What colors do you see? What do you observe? Okay, I think I have a good amount in there. It's always nice to have a rag handy, especially with some sticky corn syrup, but definitely something you can clean up very easily. Make sure you don't have ants around though. Okay, so next up I'm gonna pour is basically water up to the brim of the container here. And I'd like for us to now take a closer look at what is happening or what is not happening. So I'd like to hear in the chat, or feel free to even share out loud, what do you notice in the corn syrup and the water? What observations can we see right now? So I'll pause there just for a moment. What do you notice? What do you see? Go ahead and take a look at what I did first. So first thing I poured in was the corn syrup, and now then I poured in the water. Okay, and yeah, thanks. It isn't mixing together, right? Interesting. I mean, these are just simple observations that I think would help any student get started, but it's really having them really take a look at what we see so far. So this is just a simple question, right? Seeing that, hey, it's not mixing together really well right now. Okay, so why do you think the water's on top though? Right? Yeah, good. Thanks, Kristen. There seems to be two separate separations. Why? And then, as if you were actually observing here, you could see that the water kind of stayed to the top. I know it's kind of hard to see the camera here. Might be a better way. There we go. Okay, much better view. Okay, why do you think the light corn syrup I poured was staying to the bottom? Other questions I could ask is, where have I seen this before? Maybe in my cooking or in some of the the things I have in the kitchen. Why do you think that's happening? Yeah, perhaps, corn syrup is heavier or thicker, okay, or dense, okay? See, a lot of terms now are being provided. I love, we have some experts here as well, so I love that. I love that. So viscosity of the liquids, I love that word. So good. This is really having them think about now, really the intention and having them kind of see the connections. Like, if you're ever going and grabbing, having some bread at the Italian restaurant, you always have this oil and vinegar. And so why is it all separated all the time, right? So interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like that. So consistency of corn syrup is thicker. It needs to be shaken. Let's do that in a little bit. Okay. I know some students might be like, oh, I want to shake it right now. So let's jump on to our next idea here, and appreciate all the comments in the chat so far. But the next exciting part is this glitter. Okay, I'm actually going to add 2 different colors here today. I mean, we can even go into the color mixing and all that good stuff. But before I add the glitter, I'm going to ask you what you think might happen when I add the glitter to this wine jar here. So go ahead and throw out some ideas. If I poured in the glitter to this wine jar, what's going to happen to the glitter? Okay, some thoughts about how it will move about in the jar. Okay. Any other guesses there? Okay, some thoughts that it might float on the top initially. Okay. It'll sink. Good. Awesome. Good. Great thoughts so far. All right. So I'm going to take the green, since it's easier to see actually, because I realize, the yellow might be, the gold might be so hard. So let me pour about half of this container here. You can easily see what's happening. Huh. What is happening here? Why is it staying on the top? Interesting. All right, I'm going to pour a little bit of the gold. Add a little more green. Huh, okay. It's sticking to the top, right? I think, why, so my next follow-up question is, why do you think the glitter is just staying on the top? It's not flowing through the water. It's not even going to the corn syrup. What's causing it to stay at the top? Okay, and this is actually where you can actually jump in a little bit further into the lesson if you did want to explore about surface tension. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little heads up there. But yeah, awesome. Well, that just got it right there. So really thinking about what surface tension means, right? So this can jump into some of the STEM concepts if you did want to dive deeper into those standards and those ideas. But yes, there is a bit of surface tension, and you can bring analogies about maybe ever jumping in a swimming pool, the belly flops, things like that, right? That's like that can help bring those connections together. But right now we have our glitter sitting on top of the water because of surface tension, right? And we haven't really used anything to kind of break that in a sense. So what this is going to be the magic here of where we actually bring our soap in. Okay, so I have my bottle of soap here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place a couple of drops actually on top of the glitter. And let's see what happens. Make those observations. What do you see happening in this situation? So I just placed a couple of drops. Okay, why do you think the glitter is falling through? Because as you all have shared, the surface tension is now being broken, but now what do you notice about the glitter? Where is it actually going? I'm gonna give it a little boost here. Okay, why do you think the glitter is now settling on top of the corn syrup and not through to the bottom? It's also very calming to watch it slowly fall down as well, right? As we look at this here. Okay. So thinking about this here, right? So, this is where the concepts of surface tension, viscosity, and just density of liquids comes in, and you can definitely have those conversations there. But rather than just kind of having, what I could have done originally was just threw it all in, right? Mix it all together, shake it up. Hey, we got a mind jar, right? But I encourage y'all just to take a moment at each step. Ask those questions, finding ways where now we can think of ideas that students can connect with their prior learning, okay? And what we've done this in the past as well is that, when we did have participants that did not have the exact materials, okay, we had conversations about how different alternatives could have changed things, okay? So one example is, hey, I don't have glitter, but I do have, actually, one student brought in chocolate chips, little baking chocolate chips that they had in the pantry, and they wanted to try it. Okay. And rather than me saying, oh, no, that's not gonna work because of right? I was like, hey, go ahead and see what happens if that's the item that you have. See if you can create maybe a floating mind jar of chocolate chips, little floating around in your jar. So, rather than having me kind of share what I think might happen, I said, let's go and explore. Let's encourage that type of experimentation. And they did try it out. And, many of you might be able to think, hey, it did work, or maybe it didn't, because as you can imagine, chocolate chips and water or liquids may cause it to disintegrate a little bit, right? But hey, those are lessons learned, those are experimentations, and you can definitely quickly start over in that situation. Awesome. Okay, so with that being said here, I'm actually going to now kind of stop and place the lid on top of my mind jar here, since we've added all the items at the very specific parts. What I will do is now shake it up, right, as if you were talking about earlier, and kind of see what happens here. So let's make sure this is on tight. And I'm gonna do a really rough shake. Interesting colors, combinations. Probably not the prettiest color, blue or green or yellow, that you might have had. This is actually the good question. Hey, I have a darker green color. What can I do to make it maybe a brighter mixture of other colors? Okay, so we can even jump into that as well. So here we have our simple mind jar, right? Looking at actually closer, I know the camera doesn't really do its justice, but you can definitely see a slower kind of floating movement of these little particles of glitter. Okay, so extension question I would have, let's say, hey, you know what? Right now my glitter is quickly floating down, okay? What a challenge I would have is, how can I have the glitter in this mind jar settle within 2 minutes? Okay, what do you think I would need to do to adjust this mind jar so that all the glitter settles to the bottom within 2 minutes? So I would love to hear your thoughts. If we were to modify this jar together, what do you think I would need to do to make sure all the glitter settles to the bottom within a 2-minute time frame? And actually, it settled pretty quickly. So I would say that's about maybe a minute so far. So what would I need to do? Okay. It's a couple of different thoughts. Less corn syrup. Okay. Maybe add more soap. Yeah, thinking about how did the different ingredients that we added cause the different things to float. Okay, so bringing back the idea of the corn syrup in the water, right, creating the thickness so that the particles, the glitter, would slowly move around within the different densities, right? So adding more corn syrup would cause maybe the floating to settle in slower. Less syrup. Okay, so this is actually where you can even have students experiment a little bit, taking out some of the liquid and adding a little more corn syrup. But in this mixture I had here, I just noticed the glitter is actually settling a lot quicker than I had originally anticipated. All right. Awesome. And some other other ideas about this as well is even beyond just this the glitter. We've had folks even have them place an item come at the very bottom of this and glue it down. so that it's almost like a snow globe. Okay, you've ever wondered, like, I love the snow globes back in, during the holidays, we pull them out and like just kind of stare at the snow slowly coming down around the objects. So that can even be another project around the holidays. If you wanted to make your own snow globe, have them, build some kind of simple item in the middle that can be placed within this jar. Okay, so let me see if there's any other questions on this specific activity here before we kind of bridge those connections together and how this mind jar can relate to some SEL practices. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing my camera just for a quick second here. And I'm gonna go back to our presentation. Okay, so what we just produced now is essentially, again, a mind jar. And this tool can be just used as a simple way to help us focus on, a single area of focus, right? While we kind of breathe and practice some of our strategies to kind of keep our thoughts together, okay? The things that I was doing on top of this was providing some simple questions that educators can ask, okay? And the link that you see there, this is an image from Edutopia where you can simply ask, what do you think? How do you know this? Okay, why do you think that? And can you tell me more? I think oftentimes, at the end of an activity, we'll say, are there any questions? And you'll get the crickets, right? For the most part, if you just ask kind of the yes or no, are there any questions? But normally we, as a natural curious human beings, we always have questions. So simply rephrasing that question to, what questions do you still have, right? That can help spur some more curiosity, as time permits, so that students can even explore this even further. So what questions do you still have is a really great way to rephrase that type of thinking. Okay, so now let's talk about, how we can apply this mind jar here and really think about, given this challenging time with everything going on in 2020, seems to be the year of the year since, of a lot of anxiety and excitement and just emotion, right, in our communities and in the world as well. And so, it's not just for our students, but we're even ourselves, we're encountering countless emotions, thoughts, and ideas. So what I'm going to share with you is how we can actually build and utilize this mind jar now that we've created here to connect this with some social and emotional ideas. Okay, and this I'd like to share with you. If you haven't seen it before, it's a really great hand model of the brain, and this was shared by and produced by Dr. Dan Siegel, and he wanted folks to kind of have a simple way to see how perhaps our brains might be thinking given different contexts and different situations. And so here, I'm just gonna use my hand example. Feel free to use your hand as an example to help you understand this diagram as well. But we have our hand representing the brain. And we also have a way for us to look at the different parts of the brain using the hand. So on the 4 fingers up here, we have the prefrontal cortex. And this is really thinking about like our empathy, right? Our emotional, how we regulate our emotions, how we regulate our body, thinking about intuition, okay, thinking about morality, right? So these are all kind of things that help us really provide a perspective, okay? So this is the part of the brain. Now, looking at the thumb, okay, this is representing the limbic region, the limbic brain. This is where we react quickly to flight, right? Those situations that make us really jump at something because we find, this is the core of some of our emotions, okay? So a lot of our emotions and our reactions and our quick reactions come from this limbic part of the brain. And sometimes, we actually, well, generally we do need our brain to really work together, okay? So when we close that limbic part of the brain and kind of put our prefrontal cortex in play, we're able to regulate our emotions. We're able to regulate our body and really think about empathy and how that applies to our kind of our core emotions, right? Whether it be fear, happiness, frustration, all that good stuff. So having our kind of brain come together with the prefrontal cortex, and the limbic brain together allows us to make more kind of informed, rational decisions in a sense. Okay, that the term, I don't know if you've heard of it before, but if you haven't before, flipping your lid, right? This is when you flip your lid, when your limbic brain isn't able to really be regulated by the prefrontal cortex. And a lot of our decisions are made because of that initial reaction, right? So, I mean, just thinking about situations where, you hear something and you just want to jump at something, or you just want to react right away. This is where we need to take a moment, right? And allow our prefrontal cortex to really help us take a moment to pause and really think about, how we want to respond given that situation. So with that being said, right, we are striving to make sure that our mindset and our behaviors are able to be regulated given whatever context that we're provided. And with that being said, I'm going to jump back into this mind jar here. I'm going to share with you just one simple practice, one simple exercise that I share with my students, and actually I do with myself every so often as a simple breathing exercise. Okay. And to do that, I'm going to bring back our mind jar here because it's going to help us look at a place of focus. Okay, so I know some folks like to just close their eyes, right, to when they're practicing some breathing techniques. Some other folks like to just kind of look at a soft gaze. I'm just going to use this mind jar as a way to help us keep focus as we practice this breathing technique together. I'm going to shake it a little bit. And the way it's going to work is the breathing exercise is simply in 4 parts. Okay, it's a breathe in phase, a pause, a breathe out, and then another pause. Okay, and it's a really simple thing that even students can remember to do. But each of these phases is about 4 seconds long. So you're going to breathe in for about 4 seconds, pause for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then pause for 4 seconds. Okay. And normally, I'll do this for a minute or two. But as you notice, as we do this, I might start off with a quicker second, right? As in my seconds may be quicker, and I'll slowly pace it out so that my breath and my mindset can really come to a very a good state of thought. Okay. So we're going to practice this together, and however you need to feel comfortable, whether it be looking at this mind jar, if you prefer to close your eyes, that's fine as well. I'm going to keep this mind jar here. I'll do the counting out loud for us to go through this process, and it'll be for about a minute. So we'll go through a few runs of this specific activity. Okay, so let's start off with the breathing in. All right, so I'm going to shake up this mind jar, and it's going to help me as well because, as you can tell, I like to be very dynamic in my presentations, and even this helps me kind of slow down my pace a little bit because oftentimes my excitement overcomes my emotion, all right, or my thoughts and my words. So let's calm and bring this together just for a little bit. I'm going to start off with the breathing in. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so just a simple practice, kind of having us take those moments of pause, breathing in with those 4 moments, having an outward breath for those 4 moments, and just giving us a space to really make sense of what we're seeing today. Okay, and as you can see, our mind jar settled pretty quickly. So maybe more corn syrup, as you all have suggested in here today. Okay, so thinking about again, what originally when we had this breathing strategy, we've done this just a simple way when we come back from the classrooms or a high energy activity, and then students started to utilize this on their own, right, just quietly. I've even had a student tell me, hey, I actually use my heartbeats as the moments, as the 4 moments. So they breathe, they take a breath in for 4 heartbeats, take a pause for 4 heartbeats, and then breathe out for 4 heartbeats. And they noticed that the heartbeats were slowly kind of being more paced out to the point where they were able to now feel a bit more focused and calm within their day. Okay, so I highly encourage you guys to apply some of those strategies there, whether it be a mind jar or anything else. Again, this is just a simple way to kind of help refocus some of those thoughts without all the external distractions that we have, whether it be from our notifications from our phone for latest updates, all the things that are going on. So one simple item as a center of focus, and then having the exercise or strategy. All right. So thank you all for really participating in this simple activity here. What I'm going to have us do is to start kind of thinking about, a little reflection in terms of what we can apply based off of what I shared today and some of the things that you all were thinking about. And question I have for you all, and I'd love to hear in the chat, is, what is something new that you just learned in the past 45 minutes or so today? What is something that you can take away, or maybe a question that you might have given all that you saw within this last session here? So love to see in the chat, if you could just share maybe an idea, something you learned, or even just a question that you might have to go on from here. So I'll give you just a moment to do that. Awesome. So just starting to get some initial thoughts here. Maybe perhaps creating a snow globe and a STEM project all in one. Yeah, explore even how snow globes are created, right? Bringing some of this together. I love that. I mean, this is where, students can bring in a little bit more of their own kind of student voice in there. What do they value? Maybe an image or an object that they have found that gives them a sense of comfort, right, within this time. Love that. Graciela sharing, the importance of flipping closed-ended questions, to open-ended ones. Good. Yeah, I think a lot of times, when we're anxious to close out a session, they're already struggling to engage, right? I think, it's easy for us to ask the closed-ended questions, and we usually know the answers to them already. So oftentimes, I think for us, just to kind of check to see if they're listening, we ask for these open or closed questions, but we already know the answer to. So I encourage you all to kind of switch the questions around with more open-ended or digging deeper to what they're actually seeing. Yeah, good. Thanks, Jacqueline, as well. Again, simple activities. It doesn't need to be a complex or high cost. This is a low cost. I mean, it doesn't have to be mason jar. You can even try different types of bottles or even, containers. Maybe vegetable oil. How would that look, right? Soap is just around the house. And then, if you don't have access to glitter, see what other items can be used. We've heard folks trying to put in some other smaller, maybe beads or something like that, or something heavier that would cause things to kind of float around. So lots of different ideas that can go about this. And yeah, thank you, Martha, for sharing. Just slowing down projects, right? We sometimes we're like, hey, we have to get from A to Z within the time frame. And I think it is important to make sure that the projects do get focused and finished. But sometimes that might give us a chance to take a step back and look at the project before even sharing it and saying, hey, what is the bigger goal of this? Where do I want my students to learn? What are the bigger learning objectives? And focusing on that, right? So if the learning objective is going to be, bringing in some of those other, social emotional learning strategies, or even just other communication or critical thinking strategies, make that a priority, right? And if they didn't finish the project, that they still engage in those specific strategies and they were able to still get to it. So, definitely keep that in mind. And oftentimes, like, as I mentioned, slowing down projects, sometimes less is more, especially given, our speaker this morning was really great at sharing with all that. We have this list of to-dos. I'm very guilty of that as well. And I'm thinking, the more things I knock out, the more things I get done. But, sometimes let's take a step back and pause and seeing what's really necessary to do, so that we can ensure that not just ourselves, but our students are being able to develop these habits, right? These habits that really will help them be successful in their own lives beyond school, beyond the classroom, beyond the home environment, and even, into the workforce as well. Great. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing that. So, yeah, let's see, there's a few other comments here. Awesome. Yeah. So has this been done collectively in a virtual setting that I know of? So, we have done this specific workshop to students virtually. It was actually a combination of parents and students together. And it was more of a national type of workshop. And what was interesting is that, the students, we had a combination, right, of parents that were just, hey kids, go at it. This is your learning, right? And then we had parents actually really wanting to engage as well, as if they were the students. So it was actually a really good way for both of them to be able to learn together. And we found that it was actually pretty successful. The students were just naturally curious. We had folks share out their jars even together. And that's what I was talking about with the chocolate chips. Someone wanted to try chocolate chips in there. Someone added a lot of corn syrup, right? And as you can imagine, this, instead of saying, oh my gosh, that's too much corn syrup, we said, hey, go ahead and shake your jar. Let's have the group see what happens to the glitter. And you notice that the students were like, oh, the glitter is just kind of staying still. It's like magic, right? So a lot of great dynamics came from when, the students are ready to participate. So we just said, hey, before the workshop, have these materials handy. Parents were able to help with that. So I think that was a pretty good way to bring it together. And even the breathing strategies, again, I'm a highly advocate for having your parents or guardians support you, in your learning together and doing it together. So, that was an interesting thing to see as well in terms of practicing breathing techniques and whatnot. Yeah. So, and then the last, comment, just thinking about, asking questions to students as it relates to things they've done before. That's all about, that's why we question, right? We pull up prior experiences, we pull our own emotions, and then we ask these questions. And it's really helping them to now be more effective about their own world, right? So we want them to be producers and creators of content, of things, and not just consumers, right? And so this is exactly one of those ways to do that. All right, thank you everyone for sharing your comments. I love that reflection there. So we're starting to close out here soon, but what I wanted
David, there's 5 minutes that you have before we do the survey.
Perfect, awesome. I am actually on time today. Thank you for sharing that. So with that being said, I'm just gonna share with you just a few things, resources that you all can stay connected with us. At the TGR Foundation, we do have these monthly workshops, and I just realized I'm sharing the wrong screen. So let me go back here to my slides. There we go. So what we have here is our monthly workshops that we normally have. These are open to all educators, okay? And these are virtual workshops at the moment. A lot of our workshops have already passed, especially for 2020, but we do have more in 2021. We have one coming up in November 18th. It's actually, we shifted a little bit, even though it says, how are you a STEM educator? Really thinking about how do you build connections and interdisciplinary learning together, but we've shifted it so that it's more of a now, how are you a distance or remote STEM educator, right? So bringing about ways you can promote interdisciplinary learning in a distance learning mindset. So that is coming up on November 18th. And again, open to all educators. It's actually 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock during the day. So 2 different sessions, Pacific time, that is. So that's, many can attend if they can. What I'm gonna do here is just paste the link, once I get a second, to that specific training in the chat. And you're more than welcome to sign up for it or share that link with your peers or your staff, or even, any type of educator that really would like to bring that about. But that's one of many workshops that we'll be having throughout our time together. You can also join our educator community. You see this link here. Basically, it's a kind of an email list that you can sign up for so that you can stay up to date with our latest newsletters, our latest free workshops, digital workshops, strategies, lesson plans, all that great stuff. And finally, our website has lots of different resources. And so one of the things I wanted to bring out is tgrfoundation.org, which is the foundation that I am from. And just that would be probably your best place to go to find all the different resources, because we've really reformatted our page to allow all types of educators to find the resources they need. So if you click on that link, you'll find things like design challenges, STEM unplugged activities, videos on YouTube. So this is actually one of our STEM unplugged activities that has a video on basically how simple things that you can do with your students that doesn't require the screen time, right? Which we're always talking about, Zoom fatigue or looking at the screen for so often, for so long. So we have a series of unplugged activities that you can share with your students, and you can do it with your students so that they don't have to necessarily focus on a single point on the screen the whole time. So STEM unplugged activities, we also have design challenges on there, as well as our opportunities for our CREATE program, which is professional learning. So we'd love to see you guys coming around to our trainings. And again, if you have any questions about it, you can definitely send me a note as well. And I'll share my email in the chat too. Okay, so with that being said, feel free to follow us on social media. I'll be around for a little bit if you have any questions as well. And if there's anything else, feel free to ask that question. And appreciate you all for joining me and the rest of us today in our workshop.
So I'm going to go ahead and link the evaluation. So if you can all take a moment to head over to SurveyMonkey and give us your feedback, we would really appreciate it. And I'm going to stop the recording button. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And like David said, he will be hanging out after for a couple minutes after. If you have any questions, you could direct directly to him.
Thanks everyone for